#1 in the nation at the time. It was at USC. And Holtz knew if he could just win this game, like they would be 5-5, 500, he'd get everybody off his back, he could start moving the program forward. So it's down to the fourth quarter. Notre Dame is down by 4 points. And USC has to kick deep in their own territory. And Holtz is thinking to himself, this is perfect. There's not much time left. Even if it's a good punt, we can slowly bring it down the field, score. They won't have enough time to bring it back. I can get my 5th win. So as USC is getting ready to punt, Notre Dame, Coach Holtz sends out his punt return team. One of the members of that punt return team is a fellow by the name of Skip Holtz, his son. So punt team lines up. Holtz has his hands on his knees. He watches this punt, and it's a terrible punt. It's wobbly. It's short. He's going, this is perfect. This is better than I could imagine. And then out of the corner of his eye, he sees a yellow penalty flag, and he turns towards the flag, and the USC punter is face down on the ground, and on top of him is Skip Holtz, his son. And the ref is now signaling roughing the kicker, which means USC will retain the ball, first down, game's probably over. So as Coach Holtz explains the story, he says, so my wife's son is walking off the field. And he said, all I could think about was just grabbing him by the neck and strangling him and throwing him against the bench. He said, but as he got closer to me, something someone said to me once jumped into my mind. Sometimes people who need love the most deserve it the least. Sometimes people who need love the most deserve it the least. So as his son came over, he embraced his son. He said, it's okay. We'll come back. The whole team, every eye, was on that interaction. They would come back and win that game miraculously. And then Holtz would begin to take them to multiple national championships. And he's convinced that it was that moment that turned that team around, that gave them the freedom to be great, because they saw in that coach genuine concern for someone who at the moment didn't deserve it. So if we're going to actually love and have genuine concern about people, we have to be humble, and we got to be ready to sacrifice, because that's how love is truly judged. Let me close with this final story. Corporal Jason Dunham grew up in Scioto, New York, upstate New York, graduates from high school in June of 2000, joins the Marine Corps. By April of 2004, he's a corporal and he's a squad leader on the Syrian-Iraq border. His squad is responsible for a checkpoint on a main supply route, checking vehicles through. In that April, there was a convoy that went through, a U.S. convoy. They checked it through and it continued on the main supply route. Minutes later, Dunham hears rocket-propelled grenade fire, small arms fire, and he's sure that that convoy must have been ambushed. He leaves a portion of his squad back at the checkpoint, and he takes 3 Humvees and some of his Marines up towards where he's sure this ambush has occurred. The ambush is already done. The damage has already been done. But he dismounts out of his Humvee with his Marines and walks towards the village that's adjacent to where that took place. As he walks in the front of his squad, he sees 3 white vans that are lined up, and they just look out of place in the village. So he begins to approach one of those vans, and an insurgent jumps out of the van with a hand grenade. The hand grenade has the pin pulled, but the hand grip is still being held, which of course at that moment would prevent the hand grenade from going off. Dunham begins to wrestle the insurgent. He tells his squad to spread out and get down. And just as he's gaining control over the insurgent lets the grenade roll towards where those Marines had taken cover. Dunham pushes the insurgent away, takes his helmet off, puts his flak jacket and himself on top of that grenade with his helmet, and that grenade explodes up into Corporal Dunham. 8 days later, Corporal Dunham would die of his wounds. Not one of his squad members was killed or injured. In January of 2007, down at Quantico at the museum, a presentation was made to the Dunham family. Every member of Corporal Dunham's squad was there. The common word at that event that day was how much Dunham loved his people and how he was willing to do anything for them. But they never expected he was going to have to do that. But it didn't surprise them. So the citation was read. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty, the President of the United States presents the Medal of Honor to Corporal Jason Dunham. I think if you ask Corporal Jason Dunham what does love have to do with leadership, he'd say it has everything to do with it. I think if you ask John Lejeune what does love have to do with leadership, he'd say it has everything to do with it. And I think if you ask any really extraordinary leader, what does love have to do with leadership, he or she would say it has everything to do with it. So we have 3 C's: competence, courage, compassion. All 3 are necessary. Can't just have the compassion without the courage and the competence. But I've seen too many leaders that have the first 2 C's that never get to that third one of compassion. And like I said at the beginning, I'm convinced if you want to be extraordinary leaders, it requires all 3. The Navy needs those kinds of leaders. The Marine Corps needs those kinds of leaders. Our nation needs those kinds of leaders. And you have the opportunity to do it. But it starts with humility and the willing to sacrifice. Do I have a couple of minutes for questions before they break for lunch? Let me open it up for questions or comments. You might not agree with what I said. That's fine. You may wonder how some of this works in the real world. I'd be glad to answer any of those questions. If you ask me why I have 10 children, it's a long story, and I don't think I'm going to get into that. But anything else is fair game. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. I was just wondering, why do we have to wait until now, our first year, right before we go into the fleet, to do stuff like this or to learn such attributes or keys for leadership? I think we should be practicing it from fleet year on so that we're not sitting here saying, oh my gosh, we have 9 months till graduation. We got to learn love and humility and how to take care of our people. We should be learning that our whole time at the academy, vices some of the other things that we do learn that aren't necessary.
First of all, I'm going to tell you I don't have an easy answer to your question. There actually used to be a series of seminars that were similar to this that started 3rd class year, 2nd class, 1st class. For various reasons over time, I don't know all the reasons, but it ended up being this was the one that was done. I guess part of the hope is that some of those attributes are exampled by people that you run into along the way that help you with that. Part of my aim would be to do more of that earlier on, to talk about that a little bit more. Like I said, not talking about humility and love is not unique to the Naval Academy. It's just not that common to talk about it. But I keep watching the extraordinary leaders and saying, that's how they do it. There's something special about how they accomplish it. So I guess my challenge to you would be in this short time you have is not just do it yourself, but help pass it on to others as well. Because I can tell you, my plebe summer company commander, Bill Sitchko, who lives in Kansas, he showed me what some of that looked like by the way he led. Now, I had plenty of other leaders that I'd look at and go, well, I'm not too sure about them. But that kind of influence does a lot. And you have that opportunity, even in this short time, to show that to other people, to even start others thinking about it as well. But it's a great question. Another question or comment? And I'm open to comment. Like, I can't believe this really works. Like, you don't really love your people, do you? Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, in your opinion, when you first get to your unit, what would you say, like, the best thing? Not as far as what you're saying, like, in the way that you showed us, like, what you want to do, like, as far as love, the demonstration, but like, when you first get there, would you want to kind of shadow your unit, see exactly like how it works, as in like you don't want to throw a wrench into a working engine or anything like that? Would you be able to comment on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Did everyone hear the question? Basically, what do you do when you come to a first unit? We're going to have a guest speaker come, and we're still working some of the details on that. His name is, I'm going to get to your question. This all ties into the answer, but a guy named Jim Donald. Has anybody ever heard of Jim Donald?
Is the Admiral Donald?
Nope. No, he's a civilian. No military experience. How many of you have ever shopped in Safeway? A Safeway grocery store. He used to run Safeway. How many of you have ever shopped in a Walmart supercenter? Okay, he designed that whole idea of the supercenter. How many of you have had a Starbucks coffee? He used to be the CEO of Starbucks. This guy is a fascinating man, but I still remember this story he told. Pathmark. How many of you are from like New Jersey, New York? Any of you know who Pathmark grocery stores? Okay, well, it was a disaster, and he came in to take over this Pathmark. And this goes to your question. He didn't make any decisions when he first came in there, and there were some decisions that needed to be made. What he did is he looked at a map of where all the Pathmark stores were, and he said, what's the one that's probably having the toughest time right now? And he found this one in Newark, New Jersey, okay? And he showed up at this store at 1:30 in the morning. It was a 24-hour store. And there was a guy stacking cans on the shelves at this Pathmark store. Now, he's the CEO, okay? He's getting paid big bucks to run this company. He gets down next to this guy stacking, and he said, hey, could I help you? I was like, yeah, sure, here's a pair of gloves, you can help. He said, well, geez, tell me a little bit about your job, you know. Okay, in 3 hours, from 1:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the morning, he learned what was wrong with Pathmark. And he never told this guy he was the CEO. The point is that he went in with a listening ear, not with all the answers. He decided, I've got to really figure out what's going on. I'm going to add one thing to that, because I think it's very important as leaders coming into a new organization that we understand where the organization fits. My dad used to tell me this. There's 3 types of organizations you come into. One is everything's going great. Everybody knows it's going great, and you just need to make probably very slight adjustments. The second type of situation you come to is everything's a disaster, and everyone's waiting for you to do something because they know they need help. And the third category is the hardest one. You walk in, and everybody thinks they're really good, and they're not. That was my first platoon. They all thought they were great. And I saw after about the first 2 weeks, they really weren't that combat ready, but they thought they were. Then you have to be even more careful of how you make changes along the way. But new leaders coming into a situation, unless it's a crisis where you're going to make some pretty quick decisions anyway, take the time to learn about the unit, the people, where it's heading, what the aspirations of those people are, and then start making some movement forward. Like I said, sometimes you walk into a crisis. Like Dr. Fletcher at NASA, he walked into a crisis. He had to get things happening pretty quickly, but he knew NASA pretty well, so that helped him. But in your case, you probably don't know that unit very well. You got to take the time to do that. So I wouldn't be the type of person in the first day, you know, you get up, hi, I'm Lieutenant Athens, and here's our 3 main points of how we're going to be victorious and successful, and here are my expectations of you. And I think you need to figure that out before you get too far along and then realize you got to reel some back because they just don't make sense. Be a good listener. And I think that goes with humility. Humility branches off into a lot of areas to help us as leaders. One more question? One more question or comment? Okay. Again, I'm going to end where I started, and that is thanking you for your service and what you're about to go do. This is a good time to get your thoughts together of how you really want to lead. Even if you're about to go into the aviation community, it's going to be a while before you're maybe leading people. When you go down to Pensacola, you are a leader. People will be looking up to you. You will be interfacing with folks. Don't think that your leadership starts when there's officially a division or platoon or something in front of you. You are a leader as you walk out. Do it well. Competence, courage, and compassion. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.